I have Jen with me today, and Jen, it's very awesome. Grateful. I'm grateful to have you with me today. It's been a long time coming, so thank you for being patient. And we were just discussing about what we were talking about in the past, and it was probably like September, October. I don't know, somewhere in those months of last year. And I know you have an incredible journey of your own. I know you have a podcast that you might want to bring up a little bit. And, I know you've been experiencing a little bit, stuff going on. So feel free to share what you would like to share with us today and just be open and honest and, just be you. So let's just start with what are you excited the most right now?
That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I'm excited the most about making this year a year of opportunity. And really, I my podcast is called Move the Ball, so I use that phrase a lot. And so I'm really looking forward to just keeping the ball moving and moving it in different directions. I mean, the thing about entrepreneurship is you never know where it's going to take you. And as you know, John, I didn't plan on being on this road when I started out my career. Started out in corporate and kind of pivoted down the road. And it's just you don't know where things are going to go. You have a plan, but you pivot, right? And you pivot some more, and you meet some cool people, and you explore new projects. And so I'm just excited for the opportunities and the possibilities that can come this year.
Yeah. And so what's keep the ball moving? Is it, where that name come from?
Yeah, so Move the Ball is
Move the ball.
based on a book that I wrote in 2013. So it's hard to believe that it's been 12 years ago. In 2013, I wrote a book called Move the Ball, which was all about how you take American football lessons and apply them beyond the football field to be successful in anything you do, whether it's business related, career, or just life. And so I give people different lessons specific to football and then also some common team sport lessons to help people keep things moving. And so, Move the Ball, when I wrote the book, it was all about football and how you take these football lessons and apply them to be successful. Over time, I mentioned pivoting, right, and adapting. And also, another word is evolution. And so, it's evolved into more of this concept of forward motion. It's not just about football. You could pick any ball you want. And the idea is to keep it moving forward towards the direction that you want to go, right? Towards those goals, towards what you're looking to do with your life. And so that's kind of how it started.
I love it. And so, but how did what got you started before the podcast? I mean, let's go back to before you're doing any of this, right? You weren't doing this forever, were you?
No, no. So when I was a kid, I wanted to be in a big company, wanted to be a big CEO, Fortune 500 CEO, and make a lot of money too. But I really wanted to be that high level of leadership, big scope, big responsibility. And so what ended up happening was, I started my career in big organizations, climbed the corporate ladder, had great roles, felt valued, worked with amazing people. And so that's really what I thought my life was going to be about, continuing to climb that corporate ladder. And then that all changed in 2016. At the end of 2016, I got a phone call that really set me on a different path. And so what happened was it was November 2019, November 28th, 2019. I was living in Grand Rapids at the time, and the phone rings. It's my mom. I'm like, I'm too busy. I'll call her back later. And what I didn't know at that moment was that phone call, she was calling to let me know my dad had passed away. It was very sudden, very unexpected, and no forewarning. And so, just very shocking. And as you know, John, my mom recently passed away. And so, my dad passing was my first parent who's passing. And so it's a set of emotions like no other to lose a parent. And so I spent a lot of time reflecting and kind of thinking about life and what I was doing and why I didn't take that phone call when my mom had called me and what was I too busy doing. And I was always working. I loved it. So no complaints there. Of course, you always want to make more money, but I didn't feel like I was being taken advantage of. I felt valued. So life was good in my mind. But what I realized was the world keeps moving, whether you're in it or not. And so, as part of my reflection process, I started thinking about like all these things I have been doing for my resume. I have 7 degrees. I've worked on multi-billion-dollar deals. Like all of those things are great when you're having conversation with someone or introducing, your background to somebody. But at the end of the day, when it's my turn to go, my thought was, no one's going to care about any of those things that I just described. So, what was the legacy? What's the thing that I was going to leave behind that would continue on in my absence? Right. And so I thought about this Move the Ball book because what had happened over time. Well, first, when I wrote Move the Ball, the book, I had thought that I was going to make $1 bazillion and that was going to be the retirement ticket, right? Well, that didn't quite happen. I have gotten to do some amazing things from it, but that was not the ticket to financial independence. So I was still working. But what had happened was people were posting on LinkedIn and other social media platforms about how they were moving the ball. And they would use that phrase and they would tag me or they would use the hashtag move the ball. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. This is something that people are getting behind and gravitating towards. I'm like, that's it. That's the thing. That's the legacy. So I knew one day I would leave my corporate job behind to go focus on building out this thing called the Move the Ball movement. And at the time, not sure what it was going to look like, but that was the idea. It was going to be around this concept of moving the ball.
What's it look like now? Because I never heard of it until we met.
Yes, great question. And so, well, what it looks like now is different than what I thought it was going to look like when I first left. So let me just say that leaving corporate America was a very difficult decision. Like that's probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. You're giving up a guaranteed paycheck. I was a single parent, had 5 kids. So to walk away from that certain thing and that deposit every 2 weeks was a big step. And I ended up leaving. I'm all about doing things with intention. And so I wanted to leave on a date that had significance to me. And so my birthday is on the 29th of June. So I thought, okay, I'm going to leave on the 29th of a month. And it was going to be April 29th at 2019. So April 29th came. I wasn't ready. I'm like, May 29th. May 29th it is. Right. And then that date came and I was like, not quite ready yet. And so I'm like, I'm not leaving on my birthday. So July 29th was going to be the date. And that date came and went. And a friend of mine was like, you need to stop making excuses. You need to just go do it. And I was like, well, easy for you, Corey. You have no kids and you're an entrepreneur. It's a lot different without a family, right? That you're supporting. And so anyway, November 5th was the day that I left of 2019. And November 5th is not a 29, but it would have been my dad's birthday. And so for me, that was the best date to really enter a new chapter in my life because it was my dad's passing that kind of shifted me into this direction to begin with. So when I left, my thought was I'm going to do leadership development training, corporate speaking, Fortune 500 companies. I had worked in Fortune 50 companies. I had this resume. I thought, yeah, this piece of cake. I've got this. I have a JD, have an MBA. I've worked in big business. Like I know how to run a business. Here we go. Right. And what happened was I learned that it takes a little bit longer than we want sometimes to convert those deals. And so I'm talking to these big companies and we're having a meeting. I wasn't crystal clear on the offering because I wanted to be flexible enough to be like, yeah, I can do this, I can do that, right? Like, you don't want to be like, this is it, take it or leave it, especially when it's like your first client you're trying to land. So looking back, I was too unclear on what, and there should have been a little bit more definitiveness around it. That's a word. But anyway, so I'm having these exploratory meetings and it's going like, yeah, let's come back together in another month. I'm sure there's some stuff we can do together. Let's come back and keep talking. Then fast forward a month. And then it's like, oh, hey, Jen, budgets are tighter. Let's talk again in another 6 weeks. Okay, fine. So that time comes. Then I get an email. Hey, Jen, something came up today. We can't meet today. Let's talk again next month. So in the company's mind, they're continuing to push it down the road because it's not an urgent need to fulfill today. And for me, I'm like, oh, I need to book some business in because I got bills to pay. Right. So I was like, well, what is it that I'm going to do now? I got to do something else to make money. So I started working with people on their resumes because I was like, well, I know how to help people get jobs. So I started doing that and I hated it. I was like, I have a side hustle to this hustle that I just started. Like, this is not what I signed up for. And a friend of mine is like, well, Jen, you're looking at it the wrong way. She said, you left to help people to move the ball. By helping them with their resumes, you're helping them to get another job, which helps them to move the ball. And I was like, okay, yeah, I kind of see it. All right, fine. And so that's what I started doing in February of 2020. March 20 of 20, the world completely turned upside down with the COVID pandemic, right? And so I was like, oh, that other market that I was trying to build a business around, completely gone. So I continued to work on the resume side. And back then, there were a lot of people that were wondering about the viability of their job. And so they were looking for help. And so I actually built a decent business that first year helping people with their resumes. But that was never the goal. And so where it is today, to come back to your question, I know this was a long answer, but where it is today is it evolved from being able to help people with resumes to really looking at let's work on people's brand and pulling together their brand, their story, their collective set of experiences, and packaging it in a way that helps them position themselves for the roles that they're really interested in. So it's not just about taking any role, but let's go after the ones that you really want to land in your career. And how do you do that? How do you differentiate yourself from your competition so that you can be the one? So that's kind of where the business is today. It's all around the branding element of it. Now, I will work with people on their resumes, on their LinkedIn profile. Some people just want to learn how to increase their influence. So I'll help them from a thought leadership standpoint and coming up with strategies on how they can increase their influence. Some people want to develop a speaking platform. So we'll work with them on, okay, what would that look like? Looking at your target audience. And then how do you build that media kit, that playbook, that press kit, so that you can book these gigs? But at its core, it's really about the brand. And the same thing, I do work with pro athletes as well on the branding side. Now, they're not necessarily looking to get a job, but it's how do you take your brand and monetize it and create other business opportunities?
Yeah, so I have 2 questions for you. I'm gonna go back a little bit. So,
Okay.
first of all, what would you say to those that are thinking about leaving their job out of the corporate, right, and jumping into entrepreneurship like you did? What would you say to those people thinking about that now?
Don't do it. No, I'm just kidding. It is a roller coaster. I mean, the highs are great, the lows are you got to have some thick skin. I mean, I would say that make sure if you're going to make that jump, it is to do something that you are super excited and passionate about because it will test you. Like, not every day is going to be great. I mean, we hear people that have been on the entrepreneurial road talk about the struggle and the journey, and they have their stories of, some people are down to their last $1,000 in their bank account and they're betting on themselves and then they make it, right? Like, you have these great success stories, but those people are really passionate about the things that they're doing and they're willing to weather the storms to try to achieve the outcomes they're looking for. If you're not passionate about the business or the idea or what it is that you're looking to do, you're not going to want to weather those storms. And so I think that's the biggest thing is make sure that you are doing something that you are 100% aligned with. That, yes, if I'm going to go run a business, this thing is what I want to eat, breathe, sleep, and live because it is a very, very bumpy roller coaster.
Yeah, I'm glad you share that because that's exactly why I keep doing what I'm doing with having guests come on and sharing your journey. I agree. I'll go with the values, the mission, and the vision, right? They all have to be in alignment for whatever you decide to do. So
Yes.
yeah, right there with you. And then you mentioned like branding, right? So
Mhm.
I'm not like a cereal box or anything. Like, so like, what is that? Like, I know I hear personal branding all the time. So am I just like shedding like a spotlight on myself in a different format?
Yeah, so what I tell people when you think about branding is what other people would say about you when you're not in the room. So what are people thinking about you, whether you're an entrepreneur or not? Like, we all have a brand, right? And so how are you holding yourself out? Well, if the people were to, like, if you take your five closest friends, right, as an example, and you were to say, hey, can you come up with a couple words? How would you describe me? What would they say? Right. I would encourage people to do that. But then I would also encourage people that maybe you're not so close to also do that and see what they would say, because it's not just about the people that are close to you. Everyone is forming an opinion about you and your brand, right? Based on the interactions that they have with you, whether that's in person or what they see digitally or how they see you from afar in another, in the conference room. But everyone is forming an impression. And so it's important to actively manage what people are seeing and being mindful of it so that the way they see you is consistent with how you want to be seen.
Yeah. I like that because I did remember, I don't know how long ago, something along those lines, like sharing like an email to your list just to say, hey, what do you think about the things I'm doing or who I am as a person? I'm sure it's a deeper question than that, but to get that feedback, to see where you're actually landing and showing up in front of people, and that helps you grow as a person. So you can say, okay, I need to work better in this area. That, I mean, that's how I look at it. And it was, am I in alignment with what you're just saying?
Absolutely. I mean, you definitely want to get feedback so you know, right? Like you have an opinion of how you're coming across to people, but without that feedback, how do you know what other people are thinking or feeling about you? So I think it's always important to be soliciting feedback from people and hearing their thoughts. And people will want, like, if they are in your circle, they're going to want to share that because they want to see you succeed. They want to help you grow. It's a journey, it's an evolution, and people enjoy being a part of that.
Yeah. Is there a certain amount of people you would suggest to kind of reach out to get a feel for it?
I don't, there's not like a number per se. I mean, I would certainly look at, if you're in corporate, I would look at, your manager or your peers. People do like 360 feedbacks as an example. You could use that as a tool, but I would look at it a good cross section of different people. So people that might work for you, people that are peers with you, people that are above you, maybe in your chain today, or there might have been people that you've worked for in the past that you're still closely aligned to. But and then also, like I said, people that maybe you don't work with as closely, or even, if you're a business owner, people that you are have done business with, but also people that might just be following you, right? That you've never had a transaction with, but they comment on your posts. Like, solicit that feedback and see what people are seeing. And like I said, people love to feel like they're being helpful too. And so leverage that. And that makes people feel closer to you as well because they feel valued, that you want their opinion.
Yeah. And it's also funny how many people sit in the back seat and they don't say anything, like, for example, on social media. And then you go out in person, they go, oh, I love what you're doing. I see your posts all the time, but they never say anything on social media. It's just for whatever reason, right? But they're always watching.
Yes.
Somebody's always watching you. And I think what you're sharing is a great way to kind of connect with them and just explore and see what they're, in a sense, thinking about you. It doesn't mean you have to shift, in my eyes, but you can kind of get a feel for what other people might be thinking of you. So, I mean, that's a great exercise. Is there another exercise you would suggest doing to try to, change your resume and change to, I don't know, if if you're going to shift into a different corporate job or whatever?
Yeah, yeah, I've got some thoughts there, but I wanted to just add to what you said about how people are always watching, even if they're not commenting or engaging on your posts. And sometimes it's so easy for us to get lost in how many or how little people are engaging with our content. Those people have chosen to engage for a certain reason. That doesn't mean that other people aren't seeing it and forming an impression based upon your content, right? To your point. And so keep that in mind. Like, don't get discouraged either if you're not getting the numbers that you want. Some people, they don't comment because they don't want to get notifications all the time from other people commenting. So, I mean, people have different reasons. Some people are very private people and they don't want to leave a comment, or they don't want other people to see what they're what they enjoy, right? So there's various reasons that someone doesn't engage, but that doesn't mean they're not taking notice. So just keep that in mind. And on the flip side of that, if you're posting out content that isn't consistent with how you want to be viewed, people are seeing that too, right? So check yourself when you're putting something out there. You want to make sure that it's on brand, on point. Like in the sales world, people talk about you're always selling. Here, you're always branding yourself. So, whatever through your actions or your inactions with something. So, I think it's important that you remember that you have to actively manage your brand, especially through the content that you're putting out in today's digital space. Um, so to go to your question about like how do you rebrand or things to keep in mind when it comes to a resume or some other marketing asset, where I see a lot of people go wrong is they think it's all about them. And it's not really all about you. It's about the people that you're trying to grab the attention. So when it comes to your resume, as an example, you've got this collective set of experiences that you want to tell people about. But it's about highlighting the things that are most relevant to the roles that you're interested in landing. So if two-thirds of your experience are completely unrelated and there's no transferable skills, you don't really want to spend as much real estate on your resume highlighting details that don't really translate. So focus on the things that are most impactful that do. So what I tell people is when you're putting things on your resume, you have to ask, why would they care? Why is it important to that person reading it about that bullet that you're about to put? And is there something else that might be more impactful, more relevant that you should highlight about your background? Another thing that I tell people is you want to make it as easy as possible to get to yes. Yes, meaning the person wants to call you and invite you for an interview, a phone conversation, something else to move you along further in the process. And so when it comes to a resume, you have to keep a couple things in mind. One, people are busy. So no one wants to read a 5-page resume. And when I was in Fortune 50 companies, if I had a 4-page, 5-page, maybe a 3-page resume, unless there was something that caught me right off the bat, I'm not even reading the rest because you have to be able to concisely articulate the value that you bring. Don't make me work for it, right? You want to make it easy to get to yes. So you want me to look at your resume and say, wow, I want to have a phone call with Jon because this is amazing. So how do you do that? It's about being memorable, standing out. Beginning of the page, you should always have a professional summary. And in that professional summary, you want attention grabbing language. So do not put something like, I am a highly motivated self starter that has a high attention to detail. Like all that is such common language. You're not setting yourself apart. So you really want to think about how can I frame my background in a concise summary version that's going to really draw the reader in to wanting to know more about me. And then everything else that you have on that resume is going to be relevant to them or so noteworthy of an accomplishment that it's worth including. And so you want to apply that critical lens. What I also tell people is if you're an early career professional, it should be 1-page resume. But if you're someone who has more than 5 years experience, do not try to cram it on 1 page. Put it on 2 pages. If you do page 1 right, someone will read page 2 because they're already bought in. So it's really about how do I optimize the space, the real estate that I have, and make the most use of it so that I can get someone to get to yes and want to talk to me more. And then you can give them more details about your background or other things that you've done and sell yourself. But I feel like so many people view the resume as a data dump of let me just tell you everything I've done versus let me hone in on the things that are most important to you, person that's reading the resume.
Hmm. Yeah, and there's something else. I can't think of what the term is for it. Goes along like as with the resume, I guess. I want to call it like a one-pager kind of deal, but maybe you know the term for it. It's something new for me. I never heard of it before. Um,
Cover letter?
yeah, that's probably it. I don't know, but
Okay.
it was just like a description of yourself or whatever. And it was basically like this, and then you have your resume. And
Yes.
so, I mean,
Definitely cover letter.
yeah. So how would that? I mean, do you have to do both? I mean, like, because and how does it differentiate from each other?
Yeah, so I don't think that you have to submit a cover letter for every single job. So let me explain that a little bit more. If you are applying to a large company, chances are they're probably not going to read it. But if you're applying to more of a smaller company, then it might be worth it. And usually people will read a cover letter if they're not totally sure of the resume, like they need something more to give them a yes or a no, right? And so if you do a cover letter, again, you want it to be capturing the reader's attention. It's highlighting, it's not as detailed in terms of like bullet points that you have on your resume, but you want to summarize, what makes you qualified? Why are you a valuable asset? What is your unique value proposition? So understanding how you're differentiating yourself from other people for this particular role, that's what you do in the cover letter. The other thing that a cover letter is good for is if you are in a period of transition. So let's say you're going from one industry to another industry. Could be same job function, but different industry. Or let's say you're going to a completely different job function too, and a different industry. A cover letter is good because it gives you another marketing asset to kind of have a narrative around why you are a value added person and why the experiences you've had in your other life, so to speak, in the other chapters are relevant for this new thing you're undertaking. So if there's something that you want to explain, a cover letter is good for that reason too. And even if you're in a big company, I would still do it if you're in one of those scenarios because you never know if they're going to read it. Most cases they won't, but if they're on the fence, they might read it. So why not have it? Or another example is people who have been transitioning stay-at-home parents back to the workforce, or some people have cared for elderly parents or aging relatives, so they've had to take a break. Like things, if there's a scenario that you want to let the prospective employer know about, then it's another good reason to have a cover letter.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for explaining that. Now I know, you know. Um, Jen, what is the best way for people to reach out to you?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, like you, John, very active on LinkedIn. If you just search the Move the Ball hashtag, you should find me. I do have a newsletter on LinkedIn called The Executive Edge, where I'm always putting out an article every Tuesday on topics tied to managing your brand. How do you be a more effective networker to create those opportunities that you want? How do you articulate your unique value proposition? How do you navigate and lead through uncertain times? So, like I said, every week I'll publish one article. It's about maybe 5, 7 minute read for each week. And I'm not getting your email that way. If you go on LinkedIn and you subscribe, you just get a LinkedIn notification saying, hey, new article. So I'm not getting your contact info. I'm not going to spam you. But if you want to check it out, would love for you to give it a read.
Awesome, Jen. And you're the best one to move the ball, getting your resume looked over and getting ready to go. If corporate job, getting in, getting out, whatever you decide to do. Um, I have to ask before I ask the last question I ask everybody. I know you have a podcast. So what do you enjoy the most about a podcast?
Yeah, so my podcast is called Move the Ball. We're about to kick off season 6. So I've had 351 episodes so far. So it's been, I know you do a
Not
lot
that
of
many
episodes.
then.
Yeah, no, just a few. But the thing I love about podcasting is the connections with the people that I have on the show. So I mean, obviously we're looking to bring value, bring content to our audiences, but the stories and the perspectives of people that I've had on the show, just like you have, John, on your podcast. I mean, it's so interesting to hear their stories, but the insights that they share. And then it's also been for me a cool way to really connect with people that otherwise I would not really have a reason to reach out. I've been able to do, as an example, have a number of guests from the world of Formula One on the show. I've never done anything tied to professional motorsports in my corporate career. So the likelihood of us intersecting and having some type of relationship would not be existent if I was in corporate, right? But by having this podcast, it allows me to reach out to them and say, hey, this is my podcast. These are the things we talk about. I'd love to have your perspectives, insert pitch here, right? And then they can say yes or no. So I just think it's been cool to hear the stories, hear the perspectives, and just connect with some really great people.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that because I mean, I nobody knows this except until now that Jen was reaching out to people to say, "Hey, I want to get on more podcasts," and then we have a mutual friend, and he recommended us talking to each other and getting together and getting on a podcast. And so, like, that's how you build connections. And for me, it's the same thing. I met a woman that's in Tasmania. It's all the way around the world,
Wow.
and she does paranormal activity in a different way, but I would have never met that person. I would have, what I mean? And she would have never met me. And it's a way to, like you said, build connections and get the relationships that you never would have had before. So it's a great tool. It can be pretty much free if you do it the right way, and just to keep on moving forward and it could progress for yourself as a business or a person, personal growth, and that, not just you and the guest, but the listener as well. And that's what it's all about too. So there's three parties coming in. Um, Jen, what are the three key things you've learned and used along your journey?
That's a great question. I would say one of those is to don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it, right? Like people in your circle will want to help you, but they don't know if you need help if you don't ask them, right? So have the courage to raise your hand and say, because sometimes our ego gets in the way, our pride. We're like, oh, I don't want to ask someone for something. But, sometimes you got to be like, you know what? No, I can use some help with this. And, that could be a mental health related, that could be business related. Like raise your hand, right? And ask for help. I think, two, don't limit yourself in your thinking. Now, that sounds so non-original. So let me continue with that. But like when I was in corporate, my focus was aerospace and defense companies because that's kind of how I grew up thinking of like that's where I was going to work. But I was always a sports person. Never did I ever think I would do anything around any pro athlete because I didn't know anybody. I didn't come from that world. But through a lot of intentional networking connections, I've been able to build a brand in the professional sports space. Now, we have the benefit of technology making it so much easier to connect with people today than 20 years ago, as an example. But don't let like the fact that you don't know somebody or you have no industry contacts be a barrier for you going after something that you're really passionate about because you're only a phone call, a Zoom, a Microsoft Teams call away from really connecting with someone who could be that person that could share some perspectives, make a connection for you, right? It's all about the network and just putting yourself out there. So don't limit your thinking because you don't know an answer or you don't have a contact because you can get those things. So that's number two. And then the third thing is, I mean, we talked about this earlier, but like whatever it is you're doing, make sure that you're passionate about that, whether it's entrepreneurial or it's in the corporate space. Like one thing I learned, I mean, I climbed the ladder in Fortune 50 companies early. I was in senior leadership in my 20s. And back then I would have taken any job that I could have to continue to climb the ladder because it was all about let me just get to the next level. And I was fortunate that the jobs that I took were ones that I was interested in or that excited me or that challenged me. But even if it didn't, I would have taken it if it was a higher level of leadership because I was like, oh, it's more pay. It gets me to where I want to go. Now I'm a lot more selective on the projects that I work with. And if I were to ever go into corporate, I would be very, very particular on the, okay, well, what is the role and what am I giving up for that role? So the money is important to a certain level, but it's all our time is our greatest asset, right? So what is it going to cost me for this particular project, for this job, and making sure that I'm aligned with those requirements and I'm not sacrificing things that are maybe non-negotiable or things that I don't want to compromise. I think as we get older, our priorities change and the dollar is not the thing that we're always chasing. Yes, we like money, but there's a cost, right? And so making sure that that cost is not greater than what we're willing to spend.
Oh, awesome. That was a great way to end it there. All three of them are awesome. Jen, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your journey. Definitely diving deep into building your resume and moving the ball. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for having me on today.
Thank- There we go.